I've been thinking a little about cover 3 lately. You see guys online, if they're not running the max blitz meta, they're generally sitting in cover 3 and just waiting for you to make a mistake. And it actually works pretty well. So you have guys like me on YouTube cooking up all sorts of elaborate ways of attacking it, but it really doesn't need to be a complex process. Let's think about one of the most common adages in football. Playing too high will get you gashed between the tackles. Playing single high will get you ripped apart in the seams. And that second part hasn't always translated to Madden because of the fast reactions from defenders and the difficulty for receivers holding onto the ball, especially for throws in the seams. But there are actually some pretty simple ways of going about it. So in this video, we'll go over the most common play in everybody's playbook, 4 verticals. So no specialty formations, no special players needed, just a straightforward, effective passing concept. I've gone over 4 verticals in 3x1 sets, a number of times. I had a little series on it, but I think 2x2 actually does a much better job. To the point that I would say that this is the most effective cover 3 beater in the game, or perhaps even the most effective play against any coverage. We just need to know how to actually run it. So let's get started with 2x2 4 verticals against cover 3. So before we get into the details and how we actually want to run this, let's quickly go over the formation and how we set it up. So the formation doesn't necessarily even matter as long as you have a twins look on one of the sides. So here I picked a 2x2 spread just so I can show it to both sides of the field. But one of them can be, it doesn't have to be twins on one side. It can be a tight end and a wide receiver. It can be a compressed set. It can be an I form. However you want to find this, as long as you have one side with a twins look. Let's look at the left side here. That's going to be your main side that you look at, and we'll set that to the field to give us the most amount of space. Like I said earlier, the players don't really matter. We don't need any special abilities or anything like that. This should work just as it is. And to be honest, you don't actually even need to call 4 verticals because we're not going to be using these stock routes. They don't do a good job of what we want to do. If you see the play art here, these seam routes here, they're both essentially heading right towards that middle of the field safety there. So although we have 4 wide receivers against 3 deep defenders, right? Just a spot drop cover 3. Those underneath guys aren't really helping against these seams. We're not helping out our wide receivers by running them directly at that safety. We're not creating a good amount of space here. So what we're going to do before we get into the adjustments, we'll just show you how this is going to turn out. So I'm going to look at Hopkins here on the left. Once he clears that overhang defender, I'm going to try to throw that seamer. So right here, I could probably throw it there. In that case, I got a nice little egg catch, broke a tackle, and got a touchdown. But that's obviously something you can't rely on. So just looking at the replay here. So right here, the overhang defender did a good job of funneling him inside. So getting hands on him, delaying his route, and pushing him in towards his help. So his help is the hook defender here who sinks, and then of course the safety here. And then if you had a user defender there, he'd likely click on that and take it the other way. Instead, we got a nice little ad catch and took it for 6. On the other side here, same thing. Inside release, pushing our guy to the inside where we don't have space. So obviously, this isn't going to work out for us. Also, these kind of fades, these are never going to do anything for us. Mind you, they're there to open up space, keep space open, but we're going to do something a little bit later to give us an option there as well. So really simply, to make this all tick, what I'm going to do is fade that slot wide receiver. Okay? Not streak. It's important for him to be a fade. So what the fade actually does is, first of all, it allows us to get an outside release over that overhang guy, and that really works out best in terms of spacing, because once he clears him, we can throw a little pass lead inside, and you'll see we have a ton of space. The other thing is that little hesitation, that little delay on his release, it allows us to create more space by just delaying his release a little bit, and it allows those deep zones to drift further back, and we can open up the space between the second level of the defense and the third level of defense, or the first level of coverage and the second level of coverage. So we'll go ahead and throw it here. So you see once he clears it, we'll go ahead and throw that, and we can rack catch that, and we can take that for another 5-10 yards. And the other thing I forgot to mention about the fade route is that for whatever reason, it caught, I think because it's just far enough out, that this safety doesn't move towards him. Like, he is over here, not even in the middle of the field. He's on the right side of the field. So we've created a lot more space for ourselves, plus we've made it so the safety is nowhere near us. And even if that safety started out like over here, he would still drift over there the same way. Of course, the corner over here was preoccupied by the fade over there, and then you see all this space here. And not only do we catch it here, so we never have to worry about, you know, getting the ball knocked out for a tackle after that, or, you know, a click on the safety. There's a lot of space there. You know, I've tried a few times to try to make these guys miss. Usually you're kind of tackled there, but 30-yard gain is pretty good. Really quick 30-yard gain where you don't even necessarily need to worry about the pass rush or anything. And it's kind of in an area that the user likely isn't going to be unless you throw it over and over again. And this concept is really awesome to run as you start to approach the red zone. So we know, trying to score within the 20 and the 10 is actually pretty tricky because those zones really compress. But if you want to take a shot before you even get there, if you're seeing this cover 3, the single high, this is a great opportunity for you here. So he's just gonna, get his outside release again right here. We catch that, we walk into the end zone. So really a fantastic concept, really direct, right? We don't need to wait for any elongated crossing or post or corner routes. Right away, just wait for him to clear and you're throwing that pass lead, 30 easy and quick yards. And I'll say it doesn't even necessarily, not too many people are just running it like this and letting the curl flats go. They'll go cloud flats or anything like that. So even if we don't have that overhang defender as somebody to as a kind of an anchor point for our route, even if we get a free release, we're going to be open. So just like this, we get a free release and we can still throw that right here. In fact, we could probably house that if we have a Tyreek Hill. Okay, so that's really the simple thing. So setting your twins guys to the field, you are fading the interior guy, and then what I would also do is I would put number 1 on a comeback route. So in this case, if you have, for whatever reason, something muddies up for you and you don't like it, you don't have to throw that seam. So say if we are, manning up this guy or something like that, or the user really keys on it, and they are running a regular curl flat, well, then we have an option late to this comeback route over here, and that's 15 yards if your protection holds up. If you're crazy, you could also throw that comeback route early. Okay, so and this won't work out for hard flats or cloud flats, but if it's a regular curl flat and that overhang is engaging with your slot wide receiver, you can actually throw that comeback route early, just right here, little outside low point ball, easy 10 yards. But that's not something I run too often. Mostly if it's off coverage and I see the user kind of working his way in there, I'll work that comeback route. But by and large, it's that seam route. Whether you're getting a free release or not, that guy's going to be open. If you get a free release, that comeback's likely not going to be open. If you don't get a free release, that comeback's going to be open. Another thing you can do, you can leave the comeback route there, and instead of using a fade, you use a streak. So what a streak is going to do is he's not going to get the outside release, essentially. You're going to get an inside release, but that can work to your benefit. But you kind of have to look at the positioning of this defender right here. If he has like a bit of an outside shade, like a nickel or a dime would, then you can do this. If he has an inside shade, like maybe an outside linebacker would, then I probably wouldn't look to do this. But if he does in this case, you can do this, and what happens here is that bump delays that vertical route, and so the cornerback looks at the comeback route as his most immediate deep threat, and he will squeeze that, but your wide receiver is going to be open over the top. So just like this, throw outside pass lead, and you got yourself a nice one-play touchdown there. With that being said, though, if they're running cloud flats or hard flats, then you don't have that delay from your vertical route. And so the cornerback will see that as the threat there, and then you don't really have an option there. So if you're confident that it's going to be a curl flat, then I would go ahead and try that. If it's anything else, I would just stick with the seamer. So now, what if your opponent is using this guy and heavily keying towards the seam? So you have a number of options there. First of all, on the backside here, or to the boundary, you don't necessarily have to run 4 verticals. As long as you have 1 vertical to keep the safety, the free safety, away from the left seam a little bit, that's going to be good. Like something I'll do is just run a little underneath drag route right here, my check down got in the way, but it's a nice quick option away from the user. Or if we want to work the seam to the boundary, we can do essentially the same thing. So we're putting the slot guy on that fade route so we can get the outside release. I would leave the wide receiver on a fade. I wouldn't put him on a comeback just because it holds that corner a little bit better. We don't have quite as much space to work with. And the other thing is I would actually leave the left side. So I wouldn't do any adjustments there because this now helps the safety move away from the seam route that we want to work with. So again, it isn't ideal to the boundary, but if you are trying to work away from the user, it's definitely something you could do. So again, he's going to clear there, and then we just inside pass lead and rack that up the field. Should talk about press really quickly. So if they press these guys, sometimes this safety will go way over here, in which case we can still squeeze it in, but the window's a little bit tighter, but you're going to have way more room on the right side. So in that case, I would work the boundary. But I'll show you again, we can do the same thing over here. It just sometimes you don't necessarily get an outside release. That time we did. We threw it there. We don't have quite as much space, unfortunately. But if the free safety is still in the middle of the field and we're running press here, nothing really changes. We got the room that we want here, maybe even more, probably a little bit less, but we're still golden there. And you don't see it too often, very rarely actually, but if you come across cover 3 match right here, this is actually a good defense to protect against 4 verticals because those seam defenders actually carry the seams up the seams. So you have 5 defenders against 4 receivers, but because we are breaking off our route on the outside to a comeback, it's essentially man coverage there. So a comeback is obviously always great against man coverage. Just the only problem is that you do have to hope that the pass rush doesn't get there. So just like this, hope our protection holds up, and we throw that there for simple 15-yard gain. And this comeback route that we're just naturally putting into it anyway is going to be great for us in a variety of other situations. So if you have, I know before I said it doesn't really matter on personnel, but if you have somebody that has higher than 90 deep running and release, this comeback route works as kind of an outside release fade that gets unbumped, and you can get kind of a easy touchdown against man coverage. So say if they're running something, looks similar to to cover 3, but it's actually cover 1. They're running press coverage. Usually if you see cover 1 or man, it's some sort of press. And then you could simply just, he'll round his guy, throw a forward pass lead, and then, you get your easy score that way. Or, and this isn't just cover 1, obviously it can be cover 0, cover 2. If they are running press, but they're shading over the top so that, they're not playing bump and run coverage essentially, you're not going to be able to do that. So you can see immediately you can't, but you can wait for him to break off on that, and you can throw that comeback route late. And believe it or not, this route combination also is great against Tampa too. So you can't really throw the seam because he has to clear the vertical hook and get it underneath that deep half safety. Sometimes that vertical hook, depending on how the zones are played, he'll carry that guy. But that comeback route is really, really nice because, again, if you meet those deep route running and release thresholds of 90, I believe, might be 91, he gets a nice outside release on that guy. You can throw a little outside pass here, easy 20 yards down the sideline. And then if they are running Tampa 2, but with a soft squat there, so the soft squat is going to match man-to-man unless number 2 goes under, but in this case, we're not. We're running him up the seam. So that soft squat is going to match man-to-man. So we can't outside release and throw above him, but since he matches, we can just wait again for that corner route to break off, and we get another easy gain. So really a simple concept that you can bake into almost any formation that you have, and you don't even necessarily need the 4 verticals play. You can just make this because we're making it up anyway. Even if we call 4 verticals, we are fading the interior guy, come back on the other guy, and then especially against cover 3, it's just going to be an awesome option for you for the easiest 20-30 yards against the coverage you can find. So that's it, guys. Doesn't need to be so complex. I know a lot of people are frustrated against cover 3, but as you can see there, you have a lot of options. They're quick, they're direct, and they're effective. So that's it for this one, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.